US President Donald Trump announced a trade agreement with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday, where he said that India has agreed to stop buying Russian oil, and by buying much more from the US and potentially from Venezuela. India's crude sourcing mechanism has been a subject of constant debate. Let's discuss these dynamics behind in this episode of Energonomics with Richa Mishra, Resident Editor, Businessline. Welcome, Richa.
Hello, Renil.
Richa, my first question to you is, can you detail for us the crude sourcing strategy for India?
Renil, it's very important to understand the sourcing strategy of India. India's oil sourcing strategy, as of now, as in 2026, is defined by a pragmatic pivot toward low risk, reliable supplies to balance energy security with intense geopolitical pressure. For some time now, as a matured buyer, India has been recalibrating its sourcing pattern depending on geopolitics while sustaining its traditional tide. As of early 2026, I'm told India sources crude oil from 41 countries, a significant increase from the 27 countries it relied on just a few years ago. This diversification strategy is essentially designed to insulate the economy from geopolitical shocks and ensure a stable supply for our growing refining capacity and demand.
Well, that brings me to the second question. Why is number of sourcing growing?
Before I spell out the factors behind this development, we also must look that India's crude slate is distributed across several key regions. What we read and what we hear that Middle East still remains the largest source. Around 42.5% of our requirement comes from there. Eurasia, including Russia, around 39.2%. Africa around 7.2%, and I'm told that it's led by Nigeria and Angola. North America, 6.7%, primarily US shale. South America is around 3.9%, and we now see new deals in Brazil and potentially Venezuela. As for the reason, there are three factors that are driving it. One is risk mitigation. We are taking care of our energy security. Our refineries have become very versatile. They can process any kind of crude. And more importantly, it is pure commerce, that is the price bargaining. Wherever we are getting the best price, we are buying oil from there.
All right. Well, this leaves me being very curious. Will India stop buying Russian oil?
Well, Renil, if President Trump has his way, then yes, we will. But it seems very unlikely in the near future. And why I say so is that Indian refiners will actually need a wind down period to complete a Russian oil deal before imports from that country can be actually halted. Besides, so far the Indian government has said nothing on such oil imports. According to information available, Indian refiners have already booked cargoes loading in February and arriving in March. So, period is required where, they can bring down the imports. Besides, India became the top buyer of discounted Russian oil after the 2022 outbreak of war in Ukraine. And then we saw the backlash when the Western nations were targeting Russia's energy sector with sanctions. I would say there might be a pause, kind of a slowing down, but halt, I have my reservations on that.
Thank you, Richa, for your insightful views.
Thank you, Renil.
And thank you, listeners, for joining in. This is your host, Renil S Varghese and Richa Mishra. Until then.
For the first time listeners, Energynomics is a podcast and video series which focuses on decoding the complexities of the energy sector. We try to examine how geopolitics, government policies, and economic shifts impact energy prices and security. Through the episode, we try to dissect and demystify the issues which have a direct impact on you and I.